Today we're going to be making this super fun enrichment toy for your dog. It is an adorable little shark that I've made out of denim. It has a Velcro mouth and it holds a water bottle that you can use to give to your dog. A lot of dogs love this like crinkly noise that the water bottle makes, and so it is a great enrichment toy for them, but it also provides a safe barrier between your dog's mouth and the water bottle itself. Plus, once the water bottle gets destroyed, you can easily replace it with a new water bottle without having to replace the toy, making this a much more sustainable option. And then on top of that, you can always remove the water bottle when you need some peace and quiet. You have a fun stuffless toy, so if you have a Zoom meeting or something and you need a little peace and quiet, you can remove it and still have them play with this toy. On top of that, a lot of dogs like comfort toys. If they're into more plush toys, you can fill this with some soft articles of clothing that you don't need anymore, like some holey socks or whatnot, and this toy will then smell like you, so it will provide a lot of comfort to them. There's so many options for this toy. In terms of fabric and what I recommend, today I'm going to be making the toy out of this denim. I love the two-tone effect that I want to play with for creativity, doing a lighter underbelly and darker side to give it that kind of shark look. But as for durability, the more your dog is a super chewer, the more I recommend a heavyweight durable fabric such as heavyweight denim or canvas. If your dog's not as much of a super chewer, you don't have to be quite as diligent about this, but the more heavyweight durable the fabric is, the longer this toy will last. If your dog is not as much of a super chewer, a plush fabric or corduroy would be another great fun option for this toy. It would be a little softer and cozier for them. If you're a seasoned sewist, this is a great scrap busting project because it doesn't require a lot of fabric, so you could choose to patchwork a bunch of different fabrics together. You could always use a pair of old jeans and upcycle them. There are so many great options for you. This doesn't need to cost you a lot of money to make, which I absolutely love. So yeah, I'm so excited. Without further ado, let's get into it.
To begin your project, first lay out your fabric. If it's wrinkled, go ahead and iron it so the fabric lays flat. Next, locate the selvage edge, the tightly woven edge on the sides of your fabric that doesn't fray. Your pattern pieces have arrows indicating the grain line. The grain line should run parallel to the selvage edge. Fold your fabric just enough to fit all your pattern pieces. Use a ruler to measure across the top and bottom of the fold to ensure they're equal. This will confirm that the selvage is parallel to the fold. For the mouth and underbelly pieces, place them along the fold line. When you cut these pieces, you'll end up with a symmetrical piece that's twice as wide as the pattern. For the remaining pieces, make sure the grain line is parallel to the selvage edge. When you cut these out, you'll have 2 mirrored pieces. For the fins, repeat this process twice to end up with 4 mirrored pieces. At this time, you're going to want to use a sharp pair of scissors to make a small notch at each of the notch points in your pattern. This should be no deeper than 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters to avoid weakening the fabric, but this will help ensure that your fabric pieces line up during assembly. Now you're ready for assembly. With the wrong side of the not to confuse you, I'm using the light side of the fabric as the right side of the fabric here. But you're going to fold the fabric back 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters, press, then you're going to fold again 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters to create a double turned hem on both the mouth piece, which is piece A, and the underbelly piece B. You're going to use the notches as your guide and press these folds flat. Edge stitch the hem on both the mouth piece A and the underbelly piece B. Then you're going to go ahead and trim the overhang along the curve after sewing. With the right side of mouth A facing you, you're going to center 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters of your loop tape, which is the soft side, along the 1 inch hem and stitch it in place. With the wrong side of the underbelly facing you, you're going to stitch the 3 inch or 7.5 centimeter strip of hook tape, which is the scratchy side, along the 1 inch hem and stitch it in place using a box pattern for security. You're going to do this by stitching down one side of the tape until you get to the corner. Put your needle into the fabric, lift your presser foot, turn, and then continue sewing down. When you get to the next corner, do the same thing until you go all the way around and complete the box. Now, if you don't have hook and loop tape or you prefer not to use it, you can go ahead and skip this step. The tape just adds a little extra security for holding items inside, but it's not essential for holding the water bottle. This next seam might be a little tricky if you're a beginner, but don't worry, you got this. To make it easier, I highly recommend either marking the stitching line with chalk or a friction pen. This disappears disappears when you iron it. It will help you guide on where to pivot when you're making the turns to ensure accurate stitching. Once you've marked it with right sides together, you're just going to sew along the top edge of the body, pattern piece C, with a 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance. Make sure to back tack at the beginning and the end of the seam. This just means you're going to do a couple stitch forwards, a couple stitch backwards. That will lock the stitch in place. Take your time sewing this, and when you get to a point, all you're going to do is just take your time sewing around the curves, and when you get to a point, all you're going to do is put your needle in the fabric, lift your presser foot, turn your fabric, and then set your presser foot back down and continue sewing all the way until you get to the end. When you're done, it'll look like this. Then what you're going to do on the corners, you're going to go ahead and clip the corners. Be careful, go as close to the stitching as you can, but do not touch the threads. And this helps to remove the bulk. You're also going to clip around the curve seam. This will help the curve seam to lay flat when you turn the piece right side out. Now you're going to turn this seam right side out and press the seam. A point turner or even a chopstick can be great to help turn the points to get them nice and crisp before you press these seams. Go ahead and edge stitch along the entire seam to secure it. If you find you have difficulty at the corners because there's not enough space for your fingers, I recommend sometimes using a pair of tweezers will help just to get it started when you turn that point. Otherwise, it should be good. Now, at this stage, if you intend to put any extras on like eyes, a flat tag, or a label, this would be a great time to do it after you finish this edge stitching. When you're all done, it should look something like this. Now you're going to go ahead and turn it right sides together again and clip your tail together so that you can go ahead and sew it. You're going to sew right sides together, 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance from the notch at the base of the tail all the way to the seam at the top of the tail. Make sure to back tack at the beginning and the end of the seam to secure it. Next, you're going to clip the corners and notch the points of the tail just as you did on the previous seam to reduce the bulk. But please note, do not turn the tail right side out and press yet. We'll do that later. Set that piece aside, and next we're going to work on the fins. So with right sides together, you're going to sew around both sets of fins with, again, 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance. Make sure to back tack at the start and the end of the seams to secure them. Next, you're going to clip and notch the curved seams. So again, they removes bulk and then they lay flat. If you need to, you can use your chopstick or point turner to help get the end smooth, and then you're going to press them flat. Now that they're pressed flat, you can go ahead and edge stitch all along the curved edge of the fins to hold them secure. Make sure when you're doing the second fin that you're doing the mirrored side so that you have the good side facing up for both. And then once you're done, you can go ahead and clip the excess seam allowance. Now you're ready to add the 7 rows of top stitching. This is optional, however, it does add strength and stability to the fin, so I do recommend it. To start out, if you're a beginner, if it makes you feel more comfortable, you can always draw these lines in as a guide. Otherwise, if you do it in the order that I did, it's basically finding the center point of each row and then using that as to find the center point of the next one, if that makes sense. So for the first row, you're going to begin at the center of the raw edge and you're going to draw a straight line stopping about 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters away from the edge of the fin. You're going to put your needle in the fabric, pivot the needle, and then sew back along the same line where you started. If it's not perfect, it's not at the end of the world. It kind of adds to the decorative stitching effect. So then for the second row, start at the center point between the first row and the top of the edge of the fin, and then keep following those same steps until you repeat all 7 rows. So again, to show you again on the other fin without the guides, I just fold the fin in half to find the center point for row 1. You're going to stop about 1/4 inch away or 6 millimeters away from the edge, turn and pivot and go back the way you came, and then you're going to just use that first guide as to find the center point between the fin and the second point, and then you're going to keep going, finding the midway point between all of them until you're all done. You can clip your threads and then you've got them all set and ready to go. So now you're going to find on the body the notches to figure out where to place the fins, and then right sides together you're going to pin those fins, and then optionally you can baste them in place so that it makes it easier so they won't shift on you when we're going to put the whole body together. You've almost made it to the end. So now we are going to take the mouth, which is piece A, and the underbelly, piece B, and we're going to use the hook and loop tape to secure them together so we treat this as one piece. If you didn't use the tape, if you skip that step, no worries. Just make sure that the mouth overlaps the underbelly by 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters, and then pin those pieces together as you're pinning it to the body so that it keeps it as one piece. Now you're going to clip or pin all the way around. I like to start at the notch where the opening is, and then the top, and then just keep going down side by side until you end up at the tail notch, and it should look something like this, and you're ready to sew. Starting at the notch at the base of the tail on body C, you're going to sew all the way around until you get to the other side with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Move the tail out of your way on both sides as you get back to where you started. You make sure to back tack at the beginning and the end of the seam, and the seam should meet at the point at the notch without leaving any gaps, so you have a full continuous circle, although it looks more like a teardrop, but it's effectively a circle. Make sure as you're sewing around to make sure that the inside fins and everything stay out of the way. As another optional layer of durability, you can add a second row of stitching on top of the stitching you just did on both sides where the fins are, just to add a little extra security. You have made it to the end. Now all that is left is to turn your project right side out through the opening in the mouth and the underbelly. Now, the hardest part is going to be when you get to the skinny part of the tail, but just use a point turner, a chopstick. I even use some tweezers to help me pull it through. Take your time. It will go through, I promise you. But that's it. It's done. You're all set. Just be patient, pull it through. If your dog is a super chewer, you can add reinforcing stitching to the tail as you did with the fins, again for increased durability. Congratulations, you have done it. You have completed your shark toy. If this is your first ever sewing project, I am so proud of you for getting this done. I cannot wait for your pup to try this out. All that's left is if you go and take your water bottle and shove it in there, and it is ready for your dog to play with. They will love this crinkly noise. If the noise gets too much, you can always remove it. If the water bottle gets destroyed, you can replace it with a new water bottle or something else stuff. The options are absolutely endless. I know your pup is gonna love it. If you make them as gifts, other pet parents will also love this. But just as a safety reminder, as with any toy, please supervise your dog. Do not leave your dog unattended with any toy, whether it's this one or another one, just for safety reasons. Please, if you do make this, please tag me on Instagram. I would love to see your work. Use the hashtag in the pattern to share your beautiful creations. I can't wait to see. I'm so excited. Thank you so much to all of our pattern testers as well for making this a reality. I loved seeing their creations and their pups playing with them. So yeah, I'm super excited to definitely share it. And thank you so much for following along.